Be ready. 5 seconds. Start. Mr. Speaker Sir, a week ago today, I returned to Delhi after visiting many countries and many great cities in the West and meeting many leading personalities. I tried to understand the great movements that were taking place there and the thoughts that were passing in the minds of people. Even more so, I tried to understand what image there was of India in the minds of the people I met in Europe. Even as I watched something of the stuff of history being made in Europe, I wanted to know how far the history we might be making here was reflected in the minds of the European people. I found they were greatly interested in what was happening in India because they felt it was something very significant, something that would not only change India but affects other countries and continents. From that distance, I thought of our work here, of the great problems that face us, and the responsibility of this Parliament in making the history of India. Another thought that struck me as I travelled from country to country was how the old frontiers gradually had less and less meaning. Within an hour or two, I travelled from the capital of one great country to the capital of another. It seemed to me that despite the many unsolved problems and conflicts, the idea of national frontiers had become less and less important in the modern scheme of things. I mention this because here we are considering with great heat and passion not the frontiers of nations but the borders inside the nation between two states or provinces. If the frontiers of nations have become relatively less important than they were, and if in the course of a few years they may almost be ignored for many matters, how much less important are these problems of state boundaries which we are considering? I do not wish to underrate their importance, but I do wish this House to consider the question in proper perspective. We are apt to lose that perspective in the heat of the debate. I know that this question and this bill and its provisions have moved people strongly and deeply, and that even now there is a great deal of feeling about them. I do not suppose that the most ideal of solutions could possibly have been pleasing to all one parts to the dispute. So far I am concerned, it is of no great significance to us what part of India goes into which state boundary. We must, of course, decide which course is more desirable, but in the ultimate analysis, it does not make much difference from the government's point of view where one little part goes. I do not deny that it has a certain importance from the individual's or the state's point of view, but it has none from the national point of view. The government of India has approached this question objectively and without any particular desire to impose its decisions. We have been told that we did not go through the proper procedures of consultation and decision. But I think any person who knows what has happened in the last 6, 7, or 8 months in this country will agree that the amount of consultation and discussion that we have had about this matter is without parallel. In fact, many people say that we overdid this. It would have been much simpler if we had not tried to consult hundreds of thousands of persons in this process and thereby perhaps added to the confusion. However, it is a fact that this question has rose up, but I want this house in the first place to look at this question in proper perspective, lest we should get lost in the passions of the moment. Secondly, to realize that, however important these borders might be, they are, after all, administrative divisions inside the country. And thirdly, to remember that whatever we may decide today, nobody prevents us from making any variation subsequently. Nobody wants to change things every day. At the same time, nothing is final in the sense that it cannot be changed in the future. Our difficulty has been that we have tried too much, perhaps to balance respective viewpoints and find a common way and as large a measure of agreement as possible. In doing so, we have often succeeded in displeasing many people. Yet, I would beg of you to remember that in this very complicated business, which has affected the whole of India, by far the greater part of India has accepted, broadly speaking, the proposals that have been made. It is true that many important questions remain to be solved. Among them, perhaps the one that has been talked about most is the question of Bombay and Maharashtra. Let us realize that even if some decision which we dislike is made, it does not make a great lot of difference. A mistake made in a restricted sphere can be corrected later, whereas a blunder cannot be corrected.